One of the biggest questions I get asked is how do I book higher end weddings, or how do I break into the luxury market? And this is a huge topic. So today I wanted to begin tackling it right here on this YouTube channel. And you'd be surprised, I'm gonna give you the 3 elements that it takes that all work together. And all 3 of these elements, depending on how you use them and how good you are at them, will determine the exact type of wedding you book, how high-end the client, how luxury the market, how much you can charge. These 3 things matter most, and I'm very excited to dive in. And no, it does not have anything to do with how long you've been doing this or paying your dues as a business owner or anything like that. I know people who have been in it for years that don't get this. I know people who have been in it for 6 months that have grabbed onto it quick and have skyrocketed, and anywhere in between. So right before we dive in, if you're new here, welcome. My name is James Woody. My wife Jess and I run a company named after ourselves called James and Jess. We specialize in luxury destination weddings, and it has brought us all over the world. We're going to Portugal this year, Greece in a week. We're going to New York. We're going to Dallas in a few days. We get to go everywhere for this, and now we have this channel and our website and our Instagrams where we get to teach you amazing fellow photographers how to thrive in business and in life and how to book your dream destination weddings. And before we go any further, in the spirit of that, I have a download for you attached to this video. If you just go underneath here and click this link, it is our free guide. It's not attached to a pitch or a sales funnel or anything, but it is our complete checklist and guide of how to book destination weddings, so that you can download that guide, check off the list, everything you need to be doing consistently so you can show up on Instagram, on your website, in your business, and begin booking your dream weddings. So without any further ado, let's dive into the 3 elements that can make or break the type of weddings you are booking. Here's the 3 right now, and I'm gonna dive into each one and show you how they all work together. Number 1 is your work, your actual photography, the photographs and the art that you are taking. Number 2 is your experience. Apart from the photography side, what kind of experience are you giving your clients? What kind of experience are you giving your vendors? What kind of experience are you giving their families, the coordinators, and all those things? And that brings me to point number 3 is your relationships. Your work, your experience, and your relationships are the 3 factors that all need to be dialed in and work together that will ultimately determine where your business goes and what kind of weddings you're going to be booking. So let's start with your work. This is tricky, and keep in mind, most people have 1 or 2 of these as like a strength and 1 as like the harder part of business, and that's okay. I'm naturally really gifted at relationships. That's probably my number 1. I'm an Enneagram 7. I am an ENFP. I love people. I get fuel from people. And I'm really good at photography because I've worked really hard at it, and I like that creative side. And I love experiences. So I've been specific about building that, but everyone has their strengths to lean on, and everyone has their weaknesses that they need to work on a little bit. And that's okay. Everyone has their different things. Maybe you're hyper creative. Maybe you're super hyper creative, maybe you're an Enneagram 4, or maybe you just love the photography side, but the relationship side isn't the best. That's totally okay. There's ways to nurture that isn't going to completely kill you or anything, but it's necessary. All things are necessary. So let's talk about work. Number 1, your photography has to be good. Has to be really good. I'm not saying you have to be perfect, nor am I saying you should ever feel like you've arrived. In business, Jess and I always say, if we ever get to the day where we feel like we've arrived with what we do, as in there's no more challenge for us, we're going to hang up our cameras that day, because that means there's nothing else in it for us, because we've stopped learning. And the second we're done being students means the second our work is going to taper off. So your work has to be good enough. And if you're trying to figure out, is it? Ask someone you're close with, or someone that you look up to and you're mentoring, or me, or someone. Just say, hey, you take 30 seconds to look at my work and tell me if it needs to get better, or if I should, focus on that instead of the other 2 things. Like if your work isn't good as other people in your market, and it's not just like refined enough, that's totally okay. You just need to learn and get better at it. There's plenty of ways to do that. And I'm gonna give you a lot of resources at the end of this and ideas to get better at that. And like I said, if you're just wondering, there's this level, I feel like good enough. There's this good enough level where Your work doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be good enough to be good work to hit the market you want to. Higher end clients, that style of work. And full transparency, Jess and I aren't film shooters. We shoot in a luxury destination market. I think that's a big misconception. You can shoot film. Jess and I don't, and we're in a luxury market. So don't just assume, oh, I have to shoot film. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you have to be good at photography. You have to be good enough to go into the wedding day and do it with second nature, so you're not paying attention to your settings. Because once you do that, once you have it as second nature, it's going to allow you to focus on these other two things. So number one, make sure your work is good enough. Ask someone for an honest opinion, and ask a few people. If the overall consensus is your work can get a little bit better before it hits that yes, good enough point, that's okay. Go get some resources. I'll give you some resources after this. I'll tell you some ideas to get better and just focus on that. And like I said, you never should feel like you've arrived. Jess and I love photography, and every year we want to get better at something. We think we should, every 2 or 3 years we feel like our work still evolves and we level up. I always say it's like Mario when he gets a mushroom and goes like, boop, boop, boop. Free sound effects, by the way. That's how I feel. You should always be getting better, but there's definitely a baseline where it's good enough that you can keep moving into higher end markets. And number two, experience. I always say you can't charge more or higher end market if your work is if nothing else changes of the experience, and baseline experience. So I always give the examples. You walk into Starbucks or a coffee shop, you pay them, $3 or $5 for whatever coffee you order. 3 to 5 minutes later, you go over to this window and they hand you a cup of coffee. There's no reason to brag about you. The experience was exactly what I thought. Point A, I give you money. Point B, you give me my product. A lot of photographers just kind of survive on that. You give me money, I take your wedding photos, here's your wedding photos. My argument is that's not an experience at all. That's a baseline of services provided. The higher end you go and the more luxury markets you want, and if you want to charge more, your experience should be remarkable. And if you're just getting started, start to subtly add things. There's a YouTube video in this channel. It's our client experience graph, and it actually shows how we map out experiences. So starting at point A, instead of taking them to point B, they start at point A, and by the end of it, they're at point Z, and the whole thing builds this experience. For us, it's sending welcome boxes, it's gifting them things, it's sending them albums, and you have to keep in mind the experience. And all this we have systematized, so we're not overwhelmed or recreating the wheel every time. And it also includes the experience for all fellow vendors, including, are you sending fellow vendors galleries? That's part of the experience. That's part of relationships that I'll talk about too in a second. But make sure, I think this is the best way I can describe it. Jess and I fly Delta almost exclusively. We love it. It takes us all over the world. I can pay for a seat in coach. No problem. It's the cheaper option. It's going to get me from point A to point B, and that's it. There's no bells and whistles, but it's the same plane. It's good enough. I can pay for Comfort Plus, or I can pay for Delta One, which is where I have the bed. It literally reclines. It's amazing. And guess what? I pay more for it, and I know I'm getting way more from it. It's the exact same plane. I'm getting to the exact same destination. As in, it could be the exact same photos. You could be taking the exact same photos. Yet, you can have people pay you significant more money if your experience is through the roof. So if you're like, you know what, my work is good enough. What's here? I bet experience is a huge, huge part of it. And I have several YouTube videos on this. My advice to you would be study photographers and luxury brands and be conscientious of the experience you're given. Man, if you want to take the investment, go buy a first class seat. Fly one way, coach it next time you fly first class just for a study. Great excuse for a business study, and see how it's different. It's the exact same plane, experience is different, same destination, experience is different. You land the plane and all of a sudden you're bragging about Delta because they brought you this and that, and we paid for it. People pay for experiences, and the higher up you go, the better your experience should be. And my argument is your experience should still, no matter what you're charging, be greater of their expectation of the price you're charging. That's how you keep moving up in your prices, in higher end markets, in destination weddings, all of those amazing things. And number 3, my personal favorite, probably because it's my personal strength, is relationships. And this can be broken down into a few things. Relationships with your entire business. Internal, start with your own heart, with yourself, and your business partner. So Jess and I work together. We also have an executive assistant. We have an in-house assistant. We have an editor. We have a bunch of people on our team. And our relationship all has to be good with each other. But then let's go further than that. How do you get these weddings? How do you break into these markets? How's your relationships with fellow coordinators and planners? How's your relationship with all other vendors, with the florist, with the officiants, with the venues? Those are huge, huge things. And how's your relationship with your clients, their families, and their bridal parties? Jess and I, whenever we walk into a bridal suite, we go in the mindset at every wedding that every person, no matter their age or relationship status or anything, they are potentially our next client. That's just how I view it. Every bridesmaid, every groomsman, every brother and sister, they could be my next client. So I'm gonna show up and serve them well and connect with them relationally well through tools like being in person, like social media, like Instagram, like making sure I'm taking a photo of the bride's sister and her boyfriend, which happens all the time, and a couple years later, guess who books it? And by then your experience goes up, your photos get better, you get to charge more. So relationships are huge. And if you're thinking, okay, my experience is pretty good, my photos are great, maybe it's the relationship thing. Are you lavishing your vendors, or the venues? Are you giving your venues the photos? Are you being generous with them? Are you gifting them some things? Maybe you give them headshots. Maybe, I have some friends who've done this, maybe you want to get in so bad that they see your work and say, hey, I'm a photographer, I'm a videographer. I'm gonna give you one. This one's on me. One wedding, you can gift my services. And if you like it, let's keep working together. If you don't, you still have a free one for me, and you show up and you make it count. If you watched my last YouTube video 2 or 3 weeks ago on how to break into the destination wedding market, whenever you get the opportunity, you make it count, especially in relationships, especially when it matters and the people you want to work with. You have to kind of be untraditional and not just wait for handouts, because guess what? While you're waiting there for handouts to find the proper relationships for them to come up to you, there's other people coming to Thrive Photo Conference this year, going to Engage, going to the mixers, DMing people. This is the only time in history you've been able to get into someone's inbox in Instagram or whatever platform. They might not see it, but you can get in there, build those relationships. I know that can seem overwhelming, so I kind of wanted to give you the next steps if it were. So you have your work, you have your experience, and you have your relationships. Tactfully and tangibly write them out. I'm a big fan of 3x5 cards, or if you have like a Kindle or note, whatever you take notes on, map it out where you put a big column that says, okay, my work, my photography, my experience, my relationships, and get a good gauge of what you're strong at, what you want to get better at, and in those things, ask 3 to 5 trusted people. If it's me, send me an email. I will do my very best to get back to you. Send me a DM at James Whitty. I'm going to do my very best. And I'll be completely honest with you and take the hit. If someone says, hey, your work's good, but your experience, ask past clients how the experience was. Figure out if you're lacking in the relationships, who do you want to have relationships with? And then show up, pick those things. And when you consciously choose to show up and nurture something consistently, a funny thing happens where it happens sooner than you think when you keep showing up and you keep being consistent with something, and it turns. And all those things, just like Arnold Palmer, the golfer, said, he goes, it's funny, the more I practice, the luckier I get. The more you show up in those areas, the more opportunity happens. Then it's your responsibility to grab those opportunities and give it all you've got. If you keep doing that, there's no way you're not going to win. And it's hard sometimes. You kind of have to introspect and take the hit of maybe my work needs to get better. Maybe my experience needs to get better. When you're doing this exercise, leave your ego at the door and think down the future, what kind of experience would I want? What kind of photos do I want to be taking? And go create those things. And just do it slow and steady, one at a time. And just know the more you nurture your work, the more you nurture your experience, and the more especially you nurture your relationships, the higher weddings you're gonna attract, because that's how it works. Those are the 3 things that attract people to you, in that your work's good, your experience is great, your reputation starts to go in the relationships you have, and it starts to build. Remember, people book who they know, like, and trust. And by showing up in these 3 areas, that's going to make a lot of people know, like, and trust you through many, many avenues. So Couple things, if you want your work to get better, go buy that course or invest in that workshop where they have styled shoots and someone can coach you, or hire a photographer to coach you. 2, if you want your experience to get better, go experience luxury experiences you want. Go study photographers and other brands that give you luxury experiences and actually map out how you would want that experience to work with every client. Also, I have several YouTube videos on client experience, so just go back. I'm gonna try to link them here or here in the little pop-up tabs so you can check those out. And 3, if you want to build your relationships, start on the low-hanging fruit, which is the clients, the bridal party, the families, and the vendors you already work with. And then go invest. Come to Thrive Photo Conference in November, or if it's past that and you're watching this in the future, sign up for our waitlist for our next conference. Go to Engage, go to whatever local meetup you have with vendors, and go impress those people. Go build relationships with those people. Whew, so that is just the tip of the iceberg, but that should be enough to get you started. Make sure your work is dialed in, your experience, and your relationships. And if you start to pay attention to those 3 things, I would put money on you that your business is gonna soar. You're gonna start booking higher-end clients, you're gonna start charging more, and you're gonna break into that luxury market. Until next time, friends, make sure you grab that checklist so you can start booking your dream destination weddings. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, know that you are capable of great and amazing things, and I will see you in the next video.